Someone was chasing Joy. The corridor echoed with her footsteps as she ran barefoot, her heart beating like a talking drum. Sweat drenched her face, mixing with tears. She didn't dare look back. Her fingers trembled as she pushed open the bathroom door at the end of the hallway. She locked it quickly and pressed her back to the door, gasping for air. Somewhere behind her, the footsteps paused. She looked around wildly. Tears ran down her cheeks as she stared at the window. There was no time to think. She climbed onto the sink, pushed the window open, and with all her strength, squeezed through. She landed hard on the other side, her elbows scraping the sharp edge of a stone. Still, she got up and ran into the bush behind the house. The thick night air slapped her face as she pushed through leaves and thorns. The trees whispered secrets. The moon watched from above. Joy ran with everything she heard, fear, pain, and desperation in her steps. She glanced back once, just once, and that was when she bumped into someone.
Joy!
The boy said in a husky voice. It was Dele, one of the boys from the party. Please, she begged, eyes wide. Please, don't hurt me. From the trees came two more boys, Kimmy and Toby, laughing like drunk demons. Their eyes glowed with something dark. Joy's breathing quickened. She knew she was in trouble. Please, let me go, she sobbed, trying to stand, but they pushed her back down. The boys didn't listen. They circled her like vultures around a dying animal. In that lonely bush, with only the stars and moon to bear witness, they each took turns. Dele went first while Kimmy and Toby pinned her down. Joy screamed. She struggled. She cried and begged, kicking her legs. Betty slapped her hard again and again while he continued. Joy didn't stop fighting. She clawed, kicked, pleaded, but the more she begged, the harder they beat her. Their hands became fists, their laughter turned into growls, and their faces twisted into wicked grins as they held her down and slept with her one after the other. Then, all of a sudden, Joy stopped moving. Kimmy stood up first, buttoning his jeans.
Wait, is she breathing?
Billy leaned down, shook her gently.
Joy! Joy!
But she didn't move. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing.
She's not breathing!
Toby shouted. Panic setting like cold water. They looked at each other. All color drained from their faces. Then, without a word, they ran, leaving her for dead in the forest, under the moonlight, motionless and forgotten. Have you ever been in a situation where something terrible happened to you, yet everyone went silent? No one wants to listen. No one wants to fight for you. Have you ever been so hurt, so broken, and in a situation where no one believed you? Let's find out what Joy Ekanem did when the world turned its back on her. But before we dive into the spine-chilling tale, here's a shout out to you, my amazing members. Thank you so much for all your support. To my amazing subscribers, thank you so much for your love. I see you all. Now, brace yourselves because what you're about to watch will leave you on the edge of your seats. Let's dive into it. The sun was rising slowly over the city of Ibadan. The birds chirped and the morning breeze carried the scent of wet earth. Everything looked peaceful. But inside a quiet compound along Ring Road, a body was being carried out of a flat, covered with a white cloth. Neighbors stood outside in confusion and whispers. Some were crying, others were shocked. "Na lie," one woman shouted, slapping her chest. "How can he just die like that?" The man under the white cloth was Toby Adekunle, a young, successful businessman. He had just celebrated his 1-year wedding anniversary 2 weeks ago. People admired his marriage. He and his wife, Amaka, looked like the perfect couple, smiling in church, posing in pictures, holding hands at events. But this morning, Toby was found dead in his living room, lying on the floor in a singlet and boxers, blood trickling from his nose and mouth. Amaka sat on the floor in their bedroom, shaking and crying, and her eyes were swollen. She kept repeating the same words. I don't know what happened. I just woke up and saw him like that. I swear I don't know. Two police officers were already inside the house. One of them, Inspector Chinedu, stood silently watching Amaka closely. He had seen too many crime scenes to believe tears so easily. His partner, Sergeant Bisi, walked over to the body, squatted and inspected it. No signs of struggle. Bisi said, but see his lips, dark, like he was poisoned. Inspector Chinedu nodded slowly. Take her in. We need to ask her some questions. Amaka looked up, panicked. You think I killed my husband? God forbid. Toby is the love of my life. But her hands were shaking. It was a quiet evening. The orange glow of the setting sun poured gently through the glass windows of the Adekunle's flat. Toby Adekunle had just returned from work. His shirt slightly wrinkled and his laptop bag hanging from his shoulder. The moment he stepped inside, the sweet aroma of egusi soup and pounded yam greeted him, alongside his wife Amaka, who appeared from the kitchen with a wide smile. Welcome, my king, she said softly, taking the bag from him. Wow. Toby smiled, bent down and kissed her on the forehead.
Something smells nice.
It's your favorite, she said, leading him to the dining table already set for two. They sat together. She served him with care, even wiping the edge of his plate like a newly-wed bride. Toby laughed and teased her.
Amaka, are you trying to poison me with too much sweetness?
Amaka chuckled, but her eyes lingered on him. Just eat, she said. Later, they sat together in the living room, watching a movie and talking about plans for their next vacation. Amaka rested her head on his shoulder. I'm feeling sleepy, she said, yawning. Let me go and lie down small. You can join me later. Toby nodded.
All right, babe. Let me finish this episode.
She stood up, kissed his cheek and walked to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. About 20 minutes later, the lights blinked once, then everything went dark. Toby looked around confused.
What the hell?
He muttered, this never happened. Their inverter always kicked in automatically. He walked to the window and pushed the curtain aside. Outside, his neighbor's houses still had lights.
Why is it only my flat?
He said under his breath. He picked up a small torchlight, walked slowly down the stairs to the basement where the electrical circuit box was kept. The entire building was quiet. His slippers made a soft slapping sound on the floor. He reached the metal door, opened it and stepped inside a small room filled with wires and switches. As he opened the circuit box to check for a fault, his eyes widened in shock. Before he could even act, a snake sprang out of the box and with lightning speed, it sank its fangs into his neck. Tope screamed, grabbing his neck. He pulled the snake off, flung it across the room. Blood spilled from his neck, and he staggered back, gasping. He stumbled up the stairs, clutching his neck, his head spinning. He made it back into the living room, but then he froze. The light was back on, and Amaka was standing there. Her eyes were cold, empty, like she wasn't really there.
Help me! Help me!
Toby cried, reaching for his phone. But Amaka stepped aside, blocking his path. He stretched his trembling hand toward the table, trying to grab the phone. Just as his fingers brushed it, Amaka calmly picked it up and took it away. Then his legs gave way and he collapsed to the floor. His body growing numb, his breath slowed. Amaka walked over, standing above him. She reached behind her head and slowly pulled off the mask from her face and smiled. I want this to be the last face you ever see, she whispered, and with that, everything went black. Amaka sat in the police interrogation room, her hands resting quietly on the cold metal table. Her hair was wrapped in a neat scarf, her eyes puffy from tears, or at least that's what it looked like. Across from her sat Inspector Chinedu, arms folded, his face blank, but his mind racing.
You said you woke up and found him dead on the floor.
He repeated slowly. Yes, sir, Amaka said, sniffing. He wasn't breathing. I didn't hear anything. I just don't know how it happened. Inspector Chinedu leaned back, studying her.
No first entry, no signs of struggle. Your neighbors didn't hear anything. Your husband had no known health problems, and yet he's gone? Just like that?
Amaka kept her eyes down. I loved him. Why would I want to hurt my husband? Behind a two-way mirror, Sergeant Bisi watched silently. She turned to the forensics officer standing beside her. Anything unusual in the autopsy? The officer nodded.
Yes, there was venom in his blood. He died from a snake bite. That's the official cause of death.
Bisi frowned. A snake? In his own house?
Yes.
The officer replied. Back in the room, Chinedu exhaled and glanced at the file in front of him. After a pause, he stood and looked at Amaka.
We are sorry, madam,
he said.
We will contact you if we need anything else.
Amaka slowly rose to her feet. Her eyes were calm. She gave him a nod and picked up her handbag. That's how they accuse people falsely. She muttered under her breath, then turned and walked out of the room. A few weeks later, Mr. Toby Adekunle was laid to rest. The burial was quiet but dignified. Friends, business associates, and family gathered in black to pay their last respects. People whispered about how young he was, how sudden his death had been. Amaka wore a black dress, standing beside the coffin like a grieving queen. She shed a few tears, nodded at the prayers, and watched as the earth swallowed her husband forever. Toby had no children, and since he didn't have a detailed will, the law took its course. The bulk of his property, his house, cars, and fat bank accounts went to Amaka, his legal wife. The rest, his father's village land and a few other properties, were handed over to his family. Weeks later, Amaka sat in her room. She was on Facebook, scrolling slowly. Her eyes were sharp, focused. She wasn't just browsing, she was hunting. Then she saw it. Dele Mayowa, a familiar face. His profile was active. Recent pictures, location tagged in Lagos. He looked older now, more mature, but the wickedness in his eyes, it was still there. Without hesitation, she clicked add friend. Within minutes, the notification came in. Friend request accepted. Amaka sold the house in Ibadan and one of Toby's cars, a sleek black Benz that had drawn too much attention. She didn't want noise. What she needed was silence and precision. She relocated to Lagos, the city where anything could happen and no one would ask questions. She settled in a quiet estate in Aja, far from familiar eyes, yet close enough to track her prey. Inside the house was simple but elegant. White walls, dark curtains, tiled floors. After unpacking a few bags, Amaka brought out something strange, a small covered earthen pot. She placed it carefully on the table and removed the cover. The air changed as a snake popped out its head. Its tongue flicked in the air as it turned its glowing eyes towards her. Amaka didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled and brought out a live frog. Without hesitation, she dropped the frog at the edge of the pot. In the blink of an eye, the snake struck, snatching the frog and swallowing it whole. Amaka watched, satisfied. Then she turned and walked away. Dele had just stepped into a quiet cafe in Surulere when he saw her. Elegant, simple. She sat alone by the window, sipping from a mug, scrolling through her phone. He recognized her from Facebook.
Hi, you are Faith, right?
He said, smiling. She looked up slowly, her eyes calm but inviting. Yes, and you are Dele Mayowa. And that was how the relationship started. The chemistry was instant. Faith was different from other girls he had known. She was mature, calm, and mysterious in a way that made Dele lean in closer every time. They talked for hours. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. People said they were moving too fast, but Dele didn't care. Faith made him feel seen, safe, and special. And in just 6 months, they were married. Dele had just returned from work, tired and pressed. He dropped his keys on the shelf and walked straight to the bedroom. His body needed rest, but the moment he stepped in, he stopped. There, lying on the neatly laid bed, was a mask. His eyes widened in shock. Slowly, he walked to the bed and picked it up. It was light, but familiar. As he turned it around, he saw Faith's face in the mask. Not in reality, just an image, but clear. Sharp! His chest tightened. He dropped the mask in fear, stepping back.
What the hell is this?
But then he heard laughter, childish but eerie. He turned around and saw her, Joy, young, fragile, broken-eyed, standing near the mirror, her clothes torn, her hair messy, her face pale.
I still remember what you did on February 14th, 2005,
she said, her voice echoing like a ghost whisper. Dele screamed and stumbled back, and in that moment, he jolted awake, sweating, gasping for breath. His bedsheet was damp, his chest was pounding like a talking drum. Beside him, Faith stared. Baby, are you okay? She asked, touching his shoulder. He nodded quickly, wiping his face.
Yes. It was just a nightmare.
But his eyes didn't close again that night. The next morning, as Faith served him breakfast, she smiled softly and said, You should really rest more. Nightmares can drive a man mad. Dele froze. She sounded just like Joy. Dele couldn't shake the feeling. Even at work, his mind kept drifting, not to his task, but to the nightmare, to Joy, to her voice calling out a date, February 14th, 2005. The very day he had tried to forget. It had been over 15 years, yet the memory felt close, too close. He rubbed his face with both palms, leaning back in his seat. The images couldn't leave. That broken voice, that cold mask, and then her eyes. Something wasn't right. That night, he picked up his phone and scrolled through his contact until he found a name he hadn't dialed in a while. Gbenga. They had been tight during university, but time and life had pulled them apart. Now, he needed someone from the past, someone who was there when everything began. The call was brief, light-hearted. They laughed about old times. Then Dele said,
Guy, the reason make we hang out this weekend, it don't say. Correct.
Gbenga replied,
Saturday evening for our old spot.
Dele added before hanging up. By Saturday evening, Dele walked into the dimly lit bar they used to frequent during their university days. Laughter, music, and the smell of pepper soup filled the air. He spotted Gbenga already seated at the corner, sipping a cold drink.
My guy,
Dele called, walking over. They hugged briefly and sat down. They talked and laughed for a while, catching up on life, marriage, work stress, responsibilities. Then, Dele brought it up.
Guy, remember that your birthday party in 2005? That one we nearly scatter.
Gbenga laughed.
That wild party. How go forget? Now that party I sabi say some people don't dey mad small.
Gbenga added, laughing. Dele laughed too, but his tone was lighter. Carefully, he asked,
You still dey talk to any of those boys? Like Toby, Kimi, those guys?
Gbenga sighed.
Toby don't die, oh. Serious? Yes, since last year. They said it was sudden, strange something. Anyways, Kimi is now a pastor. Pastor Kimi of Kingdom Fire Revival Ministries.
Dele paused, then chuckled.
Kimi? Pastor? That one where they drink ogogoro raw. Life na mystery.
Gbenga said, shaking his head.
I beg, you get his number? Sure.
Gbenga said, scrolling through his phone. He sent the contact to Dele immediately. Dele saved the number, smiling on the outside, but inside something dark was staring, and somewhere deep down he knew it. The past was not done with him. On Monday afternoon, in his office, Dele finally dialed the number Gbenga had sent him. It rang twice before a calm, almost holy voice answered.
Hello, this is Pastor Kimi. God bless you.
Dele hesitated.
Kimi, it's me, Dele. Dele Mayowa. Dele.
The voice softened.
Wow, long time, my brother.
Their conversation was brief. Kimi spoke like a man who had shared his past. His voice calm and collected. He didn't ask questions, didn't dig up memories. Instead, he ended the call with a quiet prayer for peace of mind. Dele sat back in his chair afterward, heart pounding. Has he forgotten what they did to Joy? He dropped the phone and stared at the wall for a long time. Guilt rose in his throat like bile. Kimi was now a changed man, a man of God. But what about him? What about Joy? The dreams had stopped. No more eerie laughter. No more shadows of joy haunting his sleep. And with Kimi, now a changed man, Dele convinced himself it was time to move on. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe, like Kimi, he too could become a better man. The past, he decided, would remain buried. It was February 14th, ironically, the same date that had haunted him for years, but this year felt different. It was his first Valentine's Day as a married man, and Dele wanted to treat his wife Faith to something special. He closed from work early, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks, and reached for his phone to call her. She picked up after a few rings. "Thank God you called." Faith's voice came through, slightly panicked. "I've been trying to reach you, but the network here is horrible. Even the mechanic isn't picking." Dele sat up straight.
What's wrong?
"My car broke down," she said. "I'm stranded somewhere along the Iyana-Woro axis." Without thinking twice, Dele grabbed his keys and rushed out of the office. Lagos traffic tested his patience, but after some time, he reached the spot, and truly, there she was, standing beside her car, looking frustrated but calm. He parked beside her and rushed over. Faith moved aside, pointing to the bonnet. "I think the problem is coming from there," she said. But the moment Dele lifted the bonnet, a snake sprang out. It was fast, too fast. Before he could react, the snake struck him in the neck. Dele screamed, stumbling backward. Pain shot through his veins like fire. He fell to the ground, crying, holding his neck, eyes bleeding.
Babe, help, please help me.
But Faith didn't move. She just stood there, towering above him, her eyes cold. He crawled slightly, reaching for her. Still, she didn't help. Instead, she knelt down beside him, leaned in closer, and slowly pulled off her mask. Then she whispered, "I still remember what you did to me on February 14th, 2005. And it hit him. Joy! Her voice, her eyes, her pain. Faith was Joy. He had been married to Joy all along. But it was too late now. His vision blurred. His fingers stopped moving. The pain faded into numbness. And in a few seconds, everything blacked out.